Okay, Crystal. Hi, how are you doing today?
Good.
Awesome. So today we're going to talk about stuff that we've done in our lives, okay? So for example, I've been to many countries in my life. I've traveled in Europe and I've visited France, Germany, Italy, and Switzerland. I've also driven a lot in the United States. I have driven through almost 45 states. So I want to look at that sentence with you. I've got it right here so we can look at it. Can you tell me what the verb is in the first sentence? You could highlight it if you want.
In?
Yeah. And so it's important that we notice that I is I have.
Mm-hmm.
And so have is also part of the verb. Okay. So let's look at these sentences. And could you complete them in your own words? Just.
I have been to Kenya.
Oh yeah, that's amazing.
I went to California last year.
Mm.
Have you ever flown before?
Mm.
See, flown?
Yeah.
Like an airplane?
Well, I believe that's correct.
Okay. Did you go to Europe 2 years ago? And I have flown 3 times.
Nice. That was a perfect way of using that. So you saw how you knew when you saw 3 times and before and last year that you were going to use the past, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, that's perfect. So we're going to look at the rest of these verbs. Will you just, I guess you could highlight those ones too. Sorry, I'm ahead of myself.
Have traveled.
Yeah, perfect.
And have visited. Would it be have driven, even though there's also in between?
Perfect. That's great.
And have driven.
So, do you notice any phrases that mention a specific point in time?
No.
What about these ones? Let's look at those. Which ones?
2 years. Oh, last year. It's a little bit more specific.
Yeah.
And 2 years ago.
Yeah, those are both specific. That's great. What do you notice about like the verb that you chose to use in those sentences?
Was in the past tense.
Yes, it was definitely in the past tense. And it was in the simple past. Do you remember how we used that before? Just like I walked, I ran, I ate. So the best way for people to get to know you is for them to ask you questions and for you to tell them stories about your life. And I mean, it's not super exciting to say like, oh, I went to the store yesterday. They're not going to learn a bunch about you from that. But if you tell them, I went to India, like I have been to India, that says something. And then they can ask you questions about that and get to know you better, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So essentially we're just going to talk about how we can say these different things. And like the more specific things, we say a time. Like simple past, we say when it happened. I ate a hamburger an hour ago. And for the other form, we don't say the time because it's the experience. It's going to India or riding the elephant that's more important than when it happened. So you remember for simple past, these are the structures. Can you underline the verb for me?
Let's see. Eat and went.
Good. And do you see the time markers?
Yes. Hour or an hour ago and yesterday.
Perfect. Now I have a pen. Yeah. And I want you to come up with 3 simple past sentences for me.
Okay.
If you can. And you can ask me questions if you need any help.
I walked my dog today.
Good.
I went grocery shopping yesterday.
Perfect.
And I played bingo an hour ago.
Those are great sentences. Those are perfect. And you see how the verb that you made every time is just that simple past verb.
Mhm.
Perfect. Okay, so present perfect, on the other hand, is when we're talking about that experience that's more important. And so we tend to use language like, have you ever?
Mhm.
Have you ever been to India? And, or how many times? How
Okay.
many times have you ridden an elephant? And so the way that we structure these sentences, these are an example. We do the subject, I,
Mhm.
and then have, which is, we've combined them to I've,
Mhm.
and then the past participle. Do you remember that?
Yeah, that been.
Yeah, that's what the verb turns into in the present perfect.
Okay.
When we use have, it's have been instead of I am. And then the object of the sentence. I have been to countries, right? Yeah, so we don't say when it happened. That's not important. So that's not what we're looking at. And so I want you to look at these other ones.
Okay.
And yes, I'm not lost. Oh yeah, no. You can use those as an example, but I want you to come up with one good present perfect sentence that uses the have and that structure.
Okay. I have traveled around Africa would I just say, like, I've traveled around Africa in the past or before or in my life? Are all of those correct in that?
Those are all perfect, and you could say how many times is also something we're allowed to talk about.
Okay.
In the present perfect, we can say I've.
So we could say many times?
Like this one, I've driven through almost 45 states. That's a little different, but you could say I've driven through the states 45 times.
Okay. Yeah.
Something. So, would you underline your verb with have?
Have traveled.
Perfect.
And then...
And many times. Yeah, that's perfect. Great sentence. Okay, so let's look at this chart here. So this is going to help us know when we want to use them. Because now we kind of understand both forms, right? And we know how to make a sentence for both. But how do we know when we want to use them, right?
Okay.
So these have essentially the same meaning, right? Or they're close. But they're different. And so I want you to look at number one. And what's the difference there in the meaning of it?
Bob has been to Miami 3 times, or Bob was in Miami 2 weeks ago. So the present perfect is more about that he's been to Miami, and the simple past was specifically more where the object is more when he was in a certain location.
Yeah, like that is when he was there. Like that thing happened 2 weeks ago. And it's probably important for some reason.
Yeah.
Why he wasn't there, what he didn't do. But this one is talking more about, like, Bob seems to like to go to Miami, right?
Yeah.
So it tells us more about Bob. Would you look at... These all have the same number. Would you look at number 2? I don't on there.
It printed weird. I haven't been to Germany yet, or I went to Germany last fall. So yeah,
That's always they have some very different meanings.
I have
Or even if
never-
you said, I have been to Germany.
yeah, I have been to Germany. I went to Germany last fall, talking about a specific time.
Because we don't know how long they were in Germany if we just say, I have been to Germany. But there's something about the way we say it that makes it sound more important than just, I went to Germany at that point. Or I was there for 2 weeks. Or, you know? How about number 3?
I have never gone skydiving, or I didn't go skydiving yesterday. Sounds more like you're making a case for why you weren't the person that was seen skydiving yesterday.
Yeah. Or like you made a plan to and then
Yeah.
it didn't happen.
Right. How many times have you been there? When did you go there?
Yeah. And so that's kind of the focus, is like for the simple past, it's all about when, you know, because it's just about the past when you're trying to describe it. And for the present perfect, it's about the experience, and so how many is a big part of that. Okay. And so I also want you to notice the time words in this one. Would you maybe highlight what time words you see?
Yeah. On both sides?
Yes, on both sides.
So, 2 weeks. Last fall. Yesterday. And when. And then... never. 3 times. Yet. And then is the time word just times in this one?
Yeah. How many times? That's perfect. Good. So right here is a list of the time words we use.
Okay.
So with present perfect, we'll use like this many times, or yet, like I haven't done that yet, or have you ever, I have never, or I've done this many times. And for simple past, we use like last week, or 3 weeks ago, yesterday, last fall, or when did that happen, or it happened when I was a child, or it happened in 1998, for example. And so those are pretty good triggers for us to know which kind of verb we should use.
Okay.
I have this pen if you want it. Okay. So, how many places have you traveled to?
How many places?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot.
If you don't quite know, you can make a guess.
Okay. 20.
So, would you say a full sentence for me?
Yeah. I've traveled to 20 different places.
Perfect. So you just made that sentence exactly like we wanted to. The have and the past participle. And then the number of times, but not when it was. Have you ever been to Europe?
No. Well, yeah, on a flight, I guess, for a layover. So yes,
Just
I have
there.
been to Yeah, I have been to Europe.
Okay, so yes, I have, or no, I haven't. That's perfect. So that's just talking about what experience.
Okay.
You didn't even tell me when you stopped in your flight, right?
Yeah.
What places have you traveled to?
I've traveled through the United States, Kenya, Mexico, Peru.
Wow, that's a good list. Let's use the same phrase. I have traveled. Sounds perfect. We're gonna watch a video clip really quick. And do you remember what an interview is? Yeah. Could you tell me a little bit?
When someone asks you questions and you tell them the answers.
Exactly. And so, like, there's different kinds of interviews. It could be more formal, like a job,
Mm-hmm.
and it could be more like just finding out something about a new friend.
Mm-hmm.
And so you ask each other questions, and both people ask. And this video is more like that, where it has two people asking. Okay, I want you to pay special attention to the phrases that they're using, like how they say and how they ask each other. Okay? So, did you hear how she didn't have to say a whole new question? Mm-hmm. She just said, "Have you?"
Mm-hmm.
And that was still a present perfect question. Because how did he respond? We listen?
With yes, I have, or no, I haven't.
Yeah. So he responded in that form. Did you hear how they were, like, were they using that all the time?
Most of the time.
Yeah?
Yeah.
That's what I heard too. I thought it was a good example of how we use it, just to talk to one another. Like, when they were talking about skydiving especially, it's like, oh, wait, this thing? Yeah, I've done that too.
Yeah.
And then you see how we use those forms without even thinking about it. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, we're going to look at these four things here. Okay. So what we have is a verb that's unconjugated. So it's just a simple version. And then we have a time marker. Okay?
Okay.
And so what I want you to do is to write a whole sentence and pick which side it goes on, and you'll write it on that side.
Okay.
And this is the present perfect, and this is the simple past.
Okay.
And so you'll use the time marker to tell you what verb you want to use in your sentence.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. I walked to work last week. I have been out to eat 3 times. Visit when I was. Visit when I was. So, would this be like, because I shouldn't change the tense of it, right? So I shouldn't change it to like.
You want to change
visited.
the tense.
Okay, okay.
That's what you're doing.
So I could say I visited Disneyland when I was 5.
That's perfect.
Okay. And that would be the simple.
Exactly.
I visited Disneyland when I was 9, actually. Have you ever been on a hike? So here Have you ever been?
Oh, but we want to use hike as the verb
Oh, okay.
instead of been.
Okay, so
And we're probably going to need to change the
so
tense.
change the tense. Okay. Have you ever hiked before then?
Sure.
Or when have you ever hiked? Have you ever hiked before? Is that both either one right?
I think those would both be okay.
Then those would be simple.
Um,
Or have you... No, those would be asking about an experience.
yeah.
Have you ever hiked before? Okay.
Good job. So can you tell me why you put them in on the side you put them on? For this one?
Because this was talking about a specific time that I did something.
Yeah, last week.
Mm-hmm. And same with Disneyland. That was a particular visit.
Yeah, when I was 9. It
Mhm.
tells us a specific time.
And this is more like a general that I have had this experience before
Yeah.
a few times, and asking about a general experience.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. That was a great way to summarize it, that this is more general and this is more specific. Okay, so now there's just one last thing, and it's just that I want you to come up with maybe 3 sentences, 3 questions that you can ask someone to interview them. Okay? And they should be interesting things.
Okay.
And for each one, I want you to come up with 2 questions that you could ask if they say yes. So if I ask you,
Okay.
have you ever been to India?
Mm-hmm.
And you say yes, then I'm going to ask you, have you ever ridden an elephant?
Okay.
And have you ever tried tikka masala?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Okay.
So that'll make out to be 9 questions.
Okay.
But it's just 3 main ones.
Okay. So, have you ever been to Peru? And if the answer is yes, then a follow-up question,
Mm-hmm. And for the follow-up ones, we want to use simple past.
simple past. Okay. So, because those are about specific.
Yeah. So, like, when did you go to Peru?
Okay.
You know?
When did you visit Peru? So I could say, did you hike Machu Picchu?
Mm-hmm. But it's also simple
So
past, so we want to mention a time.
while you were there.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. That's a great use of that phrase.
Hike Machu Picchu while you were there. And so all the rest should be simple, right?
Your next big question should be
Okay, so another.
present perfect.
Okay. And unrelated to that one?
Yeah, different question. Because what if they say no to perfect?
Yeah.
Just poop in his tail.
Mm-hmm. Did let's see, what would be something else other than have you ever like been somewhere? Like have you
How many
tried?
times is another present perfect question.
Okay.
Yeah, have you tried is a good one.
Okay. Have you tried let's see, sushi?
True.
And if the answer is yes, could would you say, what was your favorite dish, or does it have to have a time specifically, or is it kind of an implied?
I think that's still a good, simple past sentence. That works perfectly fine for me. Because really what you're doing is you just want to find out more.
What's your favorite dish?
Okay, I'm going to stop video.